Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Festival of Nature. My name is Sam Langford. I am the producer of the Festival of Nature 2022, and I'm your host for today's event entitled Gathering Moss Using Creativity to Tackle Climate Change. Today, we're going to be hearing about a really fantastic project, Gathering Moss, to hear about the process of collaborating across continents and the fascinating ideas behind artworks that were created in 2021. We're going to have a discussion about the power of blending arts and activism from the perspective of some early career creatives. And we'll discuss how our panelists are using this creativity to tackle climate change. This is a pre-recorded discussion, so if you leave some lovely comments below, we're not going to respond to them in this recording today, but we'd love to hear your thoughts. So please do leave them below, whether you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, or perhaps somewhere else. We're halfway through the Festival of Nature 2022 so far, and there's loads of amazing events that have happened and are still to come, so I hope you're enjoying. I'm going to bring in one of our panelists today to say hello and tell us a little bit more about Gathering Moss. Please say hello to Victoria Tillotson.
Hello.
Hi, Victoria. How are you doing?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
So, could you tell us a little bit about Gathering Moss, the inspiration behind it, and what it was all about?
Yeah, so Gathering Moss is a digital landscape that exists online that's populated with a whole host of artistic ideas created by emerging creatives, all of which are exploring ideas related to climate change, and they're sort of very different in their approach. The project is a collaboration between Watershed in Bristol, Art Center Nabi in Seoul in South Korea, and media artist Chanu Lee, who are also based in Seoul in South Korea. The organizations kind of came together to create a creative camp, which happened for 5 days online, which brought together creatives from Bristol and Bath in the UK with creatives from Seoul in South Korea to really explore ideas, undertake workshops, discussions, making things in the different locations, sharing ideas across continents. And the kind of outcome of that was the amazing digital artworks, which you can see on gatheringmoss.art. Alongside the work created by the young people in the creative camp, there's also work on there by Chanu Lee, who undertook a residency in Jeju Island in South Korea, which is just off the coast, and it's one of the places that's really feeling the first effects of the climate crises. So they work with the community there to create some site-specific installations, which is really beautiful. So there's video imagery of those online, which you can see as well. And they also launched a provocation, which is ongoing, called Act Zero, in which they are trying to kind of create a movement and encourage people around the world to create net zero acts in their daily life.
Just like so much to get through there because it's like such an incredible project. Thank you so much for giving us that introduction. And I'm gonna do, with the power of technology, look at that. I feel so fancy whenever I do that. Across the bottom of the screen, we've got a link to the Gathering Moss website if you want to go and check out what we've just heard about. That'll come up throughout the recording today, and it'll also appear in the blurb for this event as well. So I'm gonna get rid of it for now. And then we're going to welcome on some of the incredible creatives who were involved in the project. So please welcome them all. I'm going to bring them all on screen very, very quickly. To Tom, to Heather, to Inez, to Sooah and Chanu. Hello, folks. How are you all doing?
Morning. I'm good.
Morning. Doing well.
Hello.
Fabulous. Whereabouts in the world are you? Can you tell me where you all are? Because I think we've got some people who are in different places. Tom, where are you?
So I'm near a town called Bath, which is near Bristol in the southwest of the UK.
And you're in the UK. Heather?
Bristol in the UK.
Bristol. Inez?
I'm actually currently in London, in North London. So, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, and then I think we're leaving the UK to say hello to Sooah and Chanu.
Hi, we're in my house, which is in South Korea, Seoul, South Korea. So, hi from Seoul.
Hello. Fantastic. Thank you so much, folks. It's really a delight to have you here to talk about this project. And I would like to hear a little bit more about you and what it is that you do. So I'm going to give you all around 2 minutes to do this, to tell us a little bit about what it is that you do. And again, I'm going to come back to Tom, first of all, if you can tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Yeah, sure. So I work as a filmmaker, a freelance filmmaker and editor. But I have a background in earth sciences, which is sort of like climate science / geology. So I did my degree in earth sciences, and then I did a master's focusing on carbon capture and storage. So I have like a climate science sort of background, but I've always been a filmmaker alongside like studying. And then since graduating, I went full time on the filmmaking. But I've always really wanted to combine like my climate science background with the filmmaking. So when this project came along, the Gathering Moss project, it was like the perfect opportunity to make something about the climate crisis, because it's not too often that a project comes along that's like, here's some time, resources to make a project about climate change, because there's no commercial motive there. But this was, yeah, a really perfect opportunity for me. So that's a bit of a background.
Thank you so much. Heather, let me come to you as well.
Hello. I am a craftivist and creative producer. I work a lot with kind of embroidery, textile, like fabric protest. And I wanted to get involved with the Gathering Moss to try and create something meaningful out of my own frustrations at kind of climate change being ignored on like every scale. And I ran some workshops with youth groups, and you know, hearing their frustrations at it still being taught as a natural disaster was what kind of prompted me to then go on and do this, get involved.
Fabulous, thank you so much. And we'll come to London next, Inez.
Hi. So I am an actor primarily, and also a writer. So yeah, when this project came about, I thought it was a great opportunity to be able to like use both in a way, because obviously acting is telling a story, and this is a big old story to tell, and obviously it's still ongoing, but there's a lot that people don't know, I think, and a lot that people don't think is their responsibility. So my aim for the project was to kind of push a little bit of the responsibility onto people, but yeah.
Fabulous, thank you so much. And finally, we're going to come over to Chanu and Sooah.
Hi, I'm Sooah, and I collaborated with Chanu here during the Gathering Moss project. And I am an artist, and my work is mostly about feminism or environmental humanities. And most of the time, I'm actually a full-time student at college.
Hi, I'm Chanu, and I'm a designer / artist interested in imagining and shaping the future, focusing on how humanity interacts with contemporary technology. And we were honestly thrilled to see such a program launched in a large scale in Korea. The subject of climate change is not discussed as much in Korea compared to European countries. And even if it is limited within the field of science or policymaking. So to see a program about climate change in the arts in such a large scale was very intriguing, and we were excited to be a part of it.
Thank you, folks. We can see that there's quite a broad range of backgrounds and experiences within even this small group of 5 people, but with a lot of overlapping motivations, which I can see where you're all coming to this project with the same sort of enthusiasm and excitement for something that is really focusing on climate justice and activism and facing down this global crisis that we're all facing. So I wanted to open up a question that was more for the room to discuss. I'm not going to come to any one person individually, but I would like you to think about how do you see the arts being used as a powerful tool for combating climate change? Does anyone have any thoughts on how how arts can be used powerfully for that?
I think using arts as a tool is always, it makes it more accessible. It makes notions that are unexplainable kind of a lot easier to understand. But I think within one of our lectures with Zoe Rashbash, she kind of introduced us to the notion of like the utopianism, and kind of, rather than going straight into the like day after tomorrow, the world's going to end, everyone's going to be in a fiery ball. It was like, how can we look at the flip side of that? And I think the arts are a really helpful tool within creating the utopian thinking. It's kind of, with all the cli-fi, the climate fiction, and the kind of, building a better future that's not as nihilistic as other forums. And I think the arts are like the most important way we can do that.
That's definitely something to think about in terms of that kind of utopia versus, would that be utopia versus dystopia sort of?
Yeah. I think it was like common for me anyway, like with this whole project, straight away I was like, okay, it's all our fault, it's all done, like straight into the dystopian thinking. But then seeing how helpful and useful and kind of less weary it makes you if you can think towards like a positive future where, everything's not on fire necessarily. Yeah,
there is a lot of that kind of disaster thinking for a lot of people when they engage with this subject, regardless of their background. And I think it is something that's very much in the minds of more general members of the public, that they think of, there's nothing that we can do, it's really awful, but here's a project that explores some of the kind of hope, I guess, that we still have for facing down this this crisis. Sorry, does anyone else want to come in on that provocation about the arts?
I'll just say one thing that Heather touched on is that obviously the arts hits a completely different demographic to like sciences and other ways like politics and things, places where climate change is usually discussed. So I think using the arts as a platform is really useful for like teaching, especially I think young people, and people who are more art inclined, about things that they might not have heard of through sciences and politics.
Do you think there's scope for bringing those audiences together? If you see that we've got sciences or politics that are very one audience, we've got those interested in arts being a different audience, do you see there being scope to merge them?
Oh, definitely. And I think as we're moving through, it's definitely merging quite a lot more. And I think, a lot of the times the more political science side are using arts now to like get all their information across. And I think it's working quite well. You can see with like infographics, and like videos and stuff that we're seeing now about things are a lot more digestible, I think, for me. So the arts is definitely helping in that way.
Grand. Anyone else want to come in on that? Victoria,
if I can chip in, I was just going to say that I think it's also important to kind of flag that this program was part of the cultural program, which was attached to the P4G summit, Seoul summit around climate change, and also COP26, which was in Glasgow in the UK. And it was kind of launched in the run up to COP26. And, the cultural program funded a lot of different activities to happen around that time, which, really does bring kind of the science and the culture together in that space. This project in particular was funded by the British Council and the Korea Foundation. And I think those institutions are really important to highlight in terms of the fact that they make this stuff possible. Without them getting behind this project, it wouldn't have happened. And them kind of platforming it within those cultural programs, which were kind of global. The kind of globe was looking at that stuff. So I think in terms of thinking about art and culture as a tool, it also works. It works hand in hand in how we can kind of link into those kind of platforms and policy making forums, I guess.
Fab. Thank you for that. Does anybody else want to come in at this point as well to share any thoughts?
Yeah, just on the back of what Heather said, I really agree with that. And I think art has the power of making you feel something, like, as opposed to a fact. You know, a feeling is so much more powerful. You can read a statistic, but you don't necessarily internalize it or act on it. It's just like in one ear, out the other. But I think certain art pieces can make you understand a topic a bit deeper. And when you have that feeling, you're more likely to perhaps act on it or change behavior based on it. So I think the arts sort of penetrate it from a different angle, but definitely have a lot more power, I'd say, than like traditional forms of media. And also, I think, sorry, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, the power of a thought, like a feeling over a thought, I think is where the arts definitely come in.
So I work in science communication. That's where my main kind of role sits, and it's always something that I have to remember and always have to say to my peers and colleagues is that facts don't change minds, and that is something that is quite well known within our industry, but it's still employed as the main way to try and engage with people. But it is the stories, it's the emotions, it's the way you make people feel. So exactly what you're all saying is the way that we need to be tackling this and many other crises around the world, is using emotion. And if art can be a powerful tool for that, then it's exactly where we need to go. Sooah, Chanu, is there anything that you wanted to come in with there?
So I think art is important in the sense that it provides a new value that is outside of capitalistic values. So let's say like capitalism or war, basically every attempt we try to exploit something else in order to have more leads up to somewhat occurring the climate crisis. So I believe the whole point of combating the climate crisis is finding alternate ways of living, such as alternating fossil fuels to renewable energy, alternating the more and more development type of lifestyle into a more slower, sustainable one. And because art is not about profit, and art is sometimes basically pointless. So I believe it can be an example for us, or like a precedent for us that we can follow along while we are combating climate change. That in that sense that we try to do something that is not about money and not about development.
Really interesting point. Chanu, did you want to come in at all with any thoughts there?
No, I'll pass. Thank you.
That's fine. That's no problem. But it's a really important point to think about the systems that do need to be broken down, isn't it, in order to combat climate change, whether it is capitalism, patriarchy, colonialism. But these are things that are all interlinked, absolutely. But they're what we need to break down in order to make real change. Thank you so much for coming in to discuss that with me. I want to talk more now about the process of going through the Creative Camp in 2021, which I know that you all participated in, and then thinking about the artworks that you created and the links to climate change. So how would you describe the experience of participating in the Creative Camp as part of this project? Anyone want to come in?
I don't mind starting again.
Go for it.
I'll go first. The main thing, like in preparation for this kind of talk and everything, the main thing that I took away from it was just like, just so inspiring. Like each day it was kind of getting my horizons broadened in like a new way, hearing about something I'd never heard about, kind of getting to speak to people that I wouldn't have the opportunity to otherwise. All whilst kind of collaborating, and like we used like different tools. So we had like a document that we would like write notes to each other. So even with the time difference and kind of, you know, we're starting our day as they're ending their day of like thing, it was nice to like, keep in contact and push the boundary on that a little bit. A lot of we had like behind the scenes videos. I don't know if we could link those two, but it was kind of each of our lecturers and stuff had just something so different and just something, you know, so unique to talk about, I think. For me, I would just say it was definitely inspiring.
So exactly what you want to hear, that this sort of thing was an inspiration for you to participate in. Anyone else want to come in at this point?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that, Heather. Everyone was so different. Like we'd have one guy, Adrian, was like a play expert. Another was an academic. Like such a breadth of opinions coming in. So definitely gave us a lot to think about, and me at least sort of like paralyzed me, because I was like, what direction do we take this in now? We've got all these experts that have given their 2 cents, and now we have to try and figure out what we want to do with it all. But yeah, it was super interesting to hear from like a breadth of different backgrounds. And for me at least, like I don't interact much with like the art scene, and like it's really interesting to hear different opinions and different approaches to artwork, for sure.
Fab. Anyone else want to come in? Seems like an eye-opening experience.
Just off the back of what Tom said, I feel like, yeah, it was in the length of time, I feel like I absorbed so much information, and it was almost too good, because we all kind of went into a little state of panic where there was so much that we could do, and so many like really specific topics that we could have focused on. So I think, yeah, the hard thing of it was thinking, right, these are all really important, and we were taught them in such brilliant ways that weren't boring. So how do we then like funnel this into something that we can use and create with? So yeah, it was really good. Really.
That's like a really good bit of feedback to get, isn't it? Like it was too good. Like things were so good that we couldn't figure out where we're going to take it, but you clearly have, and we're going to discuss that in just a second with something.
It was in a good way. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Too good in a good way.
Too good in a good way. Yeah. Sooah, Chanu, anything you want to add to this?
For me, like before this project, I have been engaging in climate strikes or activism for years, and we had never had this much support and resources for like a topic related to climate change when I was in activism. So having like a support system was very refreshing, and it allowed me to think about how much more I could do if I had the right resources, because I always had like this limited thought of what I could do about climate change. And I think that gave a really refreshing sense to me while I was thinking about climate change.
And it was really, new experience to be part of global communications and this kind of conversation about climate change. And of course, I learned a lot from the creative camp and workshops, but I also learned a lot from these brilliant artists from UK, and thanks to Vic from Watershed. And it was a great opportunity to learn new cultural experiences. So it was really great in 2 points: 1, climate change, and 2, global citizenship or cultural background. So yeah, it was amazing.
Nice.
Glowing reviews, really, right? of what came from this creative camp.
Yeah. And can I just chip in also to say that all the lectures that we did, so we had a different kind of speaker or workshop each day of the creative camp, looking at climate change from a sort of different angle, as Tom mentioned, from kind of play to thinking about sort of more museum type stuff. There was a whole range of things, but all of those lectures are on the Gathering Moss our website as well, so they're there and people can access them and listen to them. So yeah, so if you would like an inspiring experience, you can just go on there and do it yourself.
So yeah, if you're watching at home and you want your mind blown, like you've heard from our 5 panelists to say that there is so much there, then yeah, please do go check it out. So you've all kind of said something along the lines of there was a lot that came as an input for you, and you had to figure out what was going to be the output from this project. And I would love to hear about the artworks that you created, which can be viewed on the website. So I'd love to just go round and hear a little bit more about what you created and what the thinking was around it. So I'm going to start with Illogical Love. I would like to hear about Illogical Love. So we're going to come to Sooah and Chanu first.
Yeah, so in Illogical Love, we focused on dismantling anthropocentrism or in other words, a human-centered point of view. So basically, what we tried to do was to introduce animal or non-living entities to our worldview. So we did this by creating an activism group that is designed to spread awareness about how the world is multifaceted, with many active non-human things to non-human actors. So we made posters saying we are living in a knotted world, as you might seen from the opening of our event, and many other things to essentially say that we have to break free from anthropocentrism. We actually engaged in outreach and individual demonstrations with this idea and documented it, which you can see on our website. We also did some fun projects, such as making music through seaweed, which was our way of showing ways to try to connect with non-human beings in a playful way. So we also wanted to show how art could also be a form of activism. Yeah.
So in terms of the outreach that you mentioned, what form did that take? What sort of things did you do?
So during the camp, we kind of like played it by ear. At first, we made posters saying what we wanted to say, and we put it up on like populated areas in Seoul. And then we had this idea, maybe we could do actually like a demonstration out there, and we printed out the posters and we stood there. And I think it was like interesting in the fact that like the saying that we have on the poster, it's not actually like, it doesn't call for direct action. It's not political. It's more like artistic or poetic. But we tried to spread that to the people who are walking around as if it were an actual political demonstration. And we documented that and put it on our website.
What was the response to people like who were coming past?
Well, I feel like I had like a similar experience of every other activism that I had engaged before. Some people stand there to listen to me. Some people just walk by. But most of the people who actually showed interest were more interested in the whole project, like the Gathering Moss project itself. And it kind of worked as like an advertisement, I feel like.
Which is a really positive thing as well, because you find out more about Gathering Moss, then you go and you find about these incredible projects. So that's great to hear. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
So I'm going to come on next to the future we choose. So Tom, can you tell us about that?
Sure, yeah. So this is actually on the back of a talk we had by Zoe Rashbash that Heather mentioned, and she spoke to us about the concept of utopia. And like Heather was saying, it's sort of, I was like, wow, I've never thought about it like this. I've always thought about the doom and gloom and what could happen in worst case scenario, but never considered what could happen in the best case scenario. So I thought it would be really interesting to contrast the utopia with the dystopia. So that took the form of running a climate model, or two climate models, one of the best case scenario, one of the worst case scenario, and animating them on two globes and having them side by side. So I've cut the film with it's going from now until 2100, which is when a lot of the targets are set, and it's imagining what 2100 could look like in two different futures. So throughout the film, it's got like news quotations, like sound bites from news clips, which I had to find. One being something bad and the other being something positive. And I thought it was really interesting I actually found it really difficult to find the utopian sound bites, nearly impossible. Like I was contemplating recording them myself just because there wasn't anything out there of like good news about the climate. This just doesn't exist. And especially in the future, all these things that haven't happened. So yeah, it still has the dystopian element to it, but it's contrasting that with what could we imagine, like what could happen instead of that. And really enjoyed it. It was a technical challenge, and I had a lot of help from Martin O'Leary from Watershed with the technical aspects, because I was literally using like NASA's climate data, getting it into animation software, and then projecting it forwards. It was like over a day of like rendering on my computer. My laptop nearly broke after the end of it, but yeah, really enjoyed the process. And yeah, have a look at the film on the Gathering Moss platform.
So you mentioned the struggle to find the utopian quotes. What was the end game there? Like you said about considering recording yourself, but did you find some in the end?
Yeah, I did in the end, but it was a lot harder. So I had like a whole bank of dystopian sound bites I could pick from, but the utopian ones was like, that was everything I could find, just from like random news reports of like, oh, there was a record tree planting day in India in 2016. And that, you know, just adjusting that a bit so it doesn't sound like it was in the past was what I had to do, but it was hard.
I wonder if that is a real challenge with exploring the climate crisis as a subject, is that everything that is talked about is that dystopian doom and gloom, and therefore people switch off, because you can only take so much of listening to trauma and bad things before your brain doesn't want to connect anymore. So maybe what we need is a real dedicated push to talk about these good things that are happening, because they are happening, and there are lots of positives and people pushing to move towards perhaps not utopia, but at least within 1.5 to 2 degrees of warming. Those good stories are out there. So I reckon everyone should go and watch what your piece was, and we'll pop the links below for all of these individual artworks and below this post as it goes out on different platforms as well. Thank you, Tom. Okay, I'm going to come to the last choice to find out about this.
Yeah, so the last choice was focusing on, similar to Tom's, basically the two options that we have of the dystopian or the utopian future. And so, yeah, as I said, I'm a writer. So as we were going through the creative process with the camp, I started writing poems. And I actually started weirdly with the end of the project, well, what became the end of the project, with imagining a world in which everything had gone right and all the good things that would have happened, and the opposite. And so in the end, my project took form of a choose your own adventure sort of story video, where, yeah, you make your way through the world and you're given different ultimatums, and you have to choose what you do, and that obviously affects your end outcome. So yeah,
that sounds like a really interesting way to approach it. And I imagine myself, like, if I was trying to choose my own adventure of what the world could end up looking like, really struggling to make a decision, because there's so many outcomes and opportunities for the way that the world is going to develop. How did you choose what each of the different pathways was going to look like as part of that choose your own adventure?
So when I'd like finally chosen what I was going to do, I had quite big ideas about like topics with like veganism, vegetarianism, and like using transport, and like a lot bigger things that would have taken a lot more to do. So I ended up making it a lot more simple as a starting point for the project, and then hopefully if things go well, I can expand that more, and maybe go on to the ideas I had before. But to make it simple, I used the classic recycling, not recycling sort of plastic debate, and I also used the idea of listening, which part of the video, there's a poster on the wall about climate change, and there's a QR code that you need to scan, And like one of the choices is, do you read it and do you scan the QR code to find out what it's about, or do you just ignore it and walk past? Which I think is quite, I don't know, ironic with the project, because obviously that's what people are being asked to do with us. So
in fact, you mentioned about where things go next. I'm gonna bring that up towards the end to find out about where these bigger ideas are gonna go after this. That brings us to the last artwork. We're going to talk about coronary synthesis with Heather.
So, similarly to Inez, I was feeling very kind of overwhelmed in the creative camps, and I kind of was introduced to all these ideas, didn't know where to go. But something that really stuck with me was like day one. I think it was Martin O'Leary as well. He just basically kind of told us that babies are being born with microplastics in them, and I was shook. And I think that stuck with me throughout my project. So what I then wanted to do was, okay, if babies are being born with kind of 15 times more microplastics in them than adults in 2021, what are organs going to look like in 50 years, in 100 years? It's like that sort of thinking. So I made a anatomical heart from plastic. So I took IKEA, kind of just to comment on, you know, overconsumption and the greediness of it all. I took sandwich bags from them, made it into wool, and crocheted it into like an anatomical heart that I then created like an installation video with. So it was crazy, like through the whole process. Obviously, like plastic is an issue. It's definitely a smokescreen, as I learned from Tom, and it's not definitely like the reason for a lot of things. But trying to find places to put the heart that would then blend in opened my eyes too, because it is just like, so we put it in like the harbour in Bristol, and it's like, how often would you see plastic and rubbish in the harbour and just kind of walk past? You don't really notice it. Or, you know, overflowing bins of waste that doesn't get recycled. And the amount of plastic used in a supermarket, for example, it's just like there's so much overconsumption that's not needed. And I took that thinking into consideration and kind of created a video that would loop. And again, it's like the monotony and the day-to-day of just things aren't changing. And if this doesn't change, you know, are we going to have plastic hearts? Are we going to have, you know, what are our lungs going to look like? And yeah, that's the thinking behind my piece.
It's fascinating to think about the microplastics that exist inside us and what that actually means for our bodies. Because, oh, Vic, you can come in as well.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say, you know, on the subject of microplastics, we did have one other project, which is on the Gathering Moss platform by Simon Park and Sunny Choi. Unfortunately, they couldn't be here today, which is really disappointing because they're so fabulous. But yeah, their project is amazing. And they were thinking about how microplastics are traveling kind of through the environment, through people's bodies, through animals. And they imagined a kind of future where each of those kind of microplastics gathers data as it goes on, as it travels through the world. And, you know, if you kind of end up with those microplastics in your body when you die, it's kind of like, what do those microplastics say about you? So the work is really a provocation, similarly, to think about a kind of your impact on the world and what, I guess, what you bring to that narrative that might be in a piece of plastic that travels all over the place. It's a really beautiful project, so I would definitely recommend having a look at that one too.
And we'll definitely link to those underneath this project, so this video, so that everyone can see all of the amazing outputs that came from this. Folks, thank you so much for talking me through what you managed to take from all of that incredible information you were given to these incredible outputs that you've created. I've got two last things I wanted to touch on before we wrap up. We've already been going for 40 minutes. That time has just vanished. It was touched on a little bit earlier on, and how this project was involving people who are based in Bristol and Bath, and then in Seoul as well. How did this project allow climate justice movements around the world to come together? We've been seeing a lot more of it with Extinction Rebellion, the Fridays for Future movement. but there's still a lack of connected upness at times, I find anyway, when it comes to climate justice movements. But how did you find Gathering Moss allowed this to happen? Any thoughts?
I think by creating the space, and again being funded by the two councils, and like having a dedicated space, as Tom said, to explore it, is definitely like that. That's what I think needs to happen more. Like we need to put more time aside, more resources aside towards that. But I do feel like with Gathering Moss, there were certain things that we did, like with the collaborative document and the way of working that we did it, that I think could be used as like a foundation or a blueprint moving forward. Because, you know, when I first thought, oh, I'm going to be collaborating with people in South Korea, it was very daunting and like, you know, very nerve-wracking. And I think Martin O'Leary made the, there was like a matchup software that we use. So again, it like takes the awkwardness out of icebreakers, but it's all kind of things like that that we use and implemented for this that make it seem achievable on like a wider scale. But I feel like the very like success of this and the fact that it works so well just shows that it's not a case of like how to do it, it's just when to do it. Because, you know, when you bring 5, 6, 7 passionate people together in a room, we make cool things. We make some cool things.
So on that note, a question for Vic is that this has clearly been an incredibly positive experience for everyone involved, like a glowing review here. Is there plans for it to be used as a blueprint or exemplar for how this sort of project could work?
Yeah, so this project itself is running till the end of this year, and we are actively participating in events and conferences and discussions like this to get it out there and get the ideas discussed. And then as a kind of collective of organizations, we're also, you know, having chats about, you know, what we might do next, what this could look like, how we can build on it. I mean, as usual, we've got 100 ideas. So, you know, we need to kind of narrow that down, which we're going to kind of work on through this year and look at like where we can really go with this, because it has been, you know, a fabulous project and is a fabulous project. And I think there's loads more that we can do in this area. And I think also like some of the power in it is thinking about, you know, what kind of threaded through this is that it's sort of locally rooted, but globally connected, you know, and it's like the climate crisis is a local problem to all of us, but it's also a planetary global problem. So it's like how we bring those two things together to create conversations and happenings and get people looking at stuff in a way that's really going to make a difference.
Fab, thank you so much. Anyone else want to come in on that question about the connected upness of this project and climate justice movements? That's all right, no worries. Like that's almost time for us to wrap up, folks. But I wanted to end just to think about where you're all going next. So what are your plans? Like you've went through this incredible creative camp. We've got the artworks that I just checked the website and over 23,000 people have already looked at. And by the time this video goes out, I'm sure that'll be thousands and thousands higher because it's a few weeks before it will reach the public. So people clearly interested. But what's next for you all? What are you all working on? Who wants to come in?
Well, on the back of this, very generously, the Watershed has offered Inez, Heather and I residencies. So we now have access to the Pervasive Media Studios network of creatives and the space there in Bristol. So although I don't have any outstanding ideas just yet, I'm really looking forward to collaborating with artists at the Watershed, at the Pervasive Media Studio, getting new ideas from them and yeah, continuing to work with these guys for sure.
Fab.
And maybe I should just say, Pervasive Media Studio is a space within the Watershed where we host a community of creative practitioners who are exploring projects that use creative technologies. So kind of some are commercial, some are cultural, and we sort of have everything in between. And we have sort of artists, designers, scientists, technologists, a whole range of people who kind of come and use the space and develop their projects and kind of bounce off each other. We've actually just opened for applications for people who want to become residents as well. So you can go to the Pervasive Media Studio website and check that out if you're interested in getting involved in that too. Oh, and just to say, we also have lunchtime talks every Friday, which are online in the building and open studios. So you don't even have to be a resident to come in and get involved. So yeah, have a look anyway.
Well, we're recording this on a Friday and I don't have any plans at lunchtime. So if there's an online thing, I might be logging on later on. So that is Tom, Heather, Inez, you're all looking at residencies at Pervasive Media Studios. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Mine's a little bit more boring. I'm off to drama school in October, so I'm gonna have to put it all on pause for a while. But yeah, hopefully once I'm done with that, I'd love to get back involved in the more creative side of things. So, yeah.
Not at all boring. Drama school. That sounds absolutely fantastic. So yeah, congratulations. That sounds great. Heather, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, what's next? I just want to make a 6-foot tall human out of plastic. I think that's what I want to kind of do. And then with the residency, through this process, it was the whole big question was, how do you combine kind of technology and the arts, and how do you do like digital and the physical? And I think I want to keep exploring that, because I'm definitely more of a tactile creator. So a lot more unconventional materials. How can I make fabric sing? We'll see.
Fab. And we'll come back over to Sooah and Chanu as well to hear what's next for you folks.
I feel like us working as a team is going to be the last time here at Gathering Moss. For me, I'm also going off to school. I'm going to be studying museology now, and I'm hoping to get to work at natural history museums or zoos or aquariums where I can be more closer to animal history.
I'm currently preparing to graduate, and hopefully aiming to study at UK, maybe graduate school. Nothing is set right now, but yeah, that's my goal for like 2 or 3 years afterwards. So yeah, that's
fab. Oh, folks, it has been an absolute delight speaking to you this morning or this afternoon. I have loved getting to hear more about what you've been up to as part of Gathering Moss. It was a complete breath of fresh air as a project for me to find out. So I've been really delighted to be here to talk to you all about it. Vic, was there anything else that you wanted to add just before we wrap up?
No, other than thank you, everybody, for coming today and having this discussion. It's been lovely to kind of touch in and chat through what we did together, and yeah, just to reflect a little bit on how amazing it all was. So thanks.
Fabulous. I'm going to take you all off screen, but thank you so much for being part of this. If you've enjoyed what we've been up to today, please do tell us in the comments below. This has been part of the Festival of Nature 2022, and as I said at the beginning, we have already had some amazing events, both in person and online, and we still have lots of really incredible things to come. Follow along with us on our website, our Twitter account, or Facebook account. We'll be posting links alongside this video as well. But thank you so much for watching. Take care, and we'll see you all